Hey, what is up, everybody? So I want to go over some updates from day 3 of Packers training camp. Unfortunately, we got some not too great news earlier today on a couple different players, with Aaron Banks and Savion Williams dealing with injuries, which I touched on this YouTube channel earlier today. And also, if you have not followed me on Twitter, my username is @LukeBeller3. I share some thoughts throughout the Packers camp out that's going on. So if you want more thoughts there, feel free to check that out. But I want to start off with the two different injuries from today. First off, from Wes Hodquist, who says, LaFleur on Aaron Banks, who dropped out of practice yesterday, quote, he had a little back issue. Everything checked out all right. It's going to be very day-to-day. So anytime you have this guy you paid, you gave a 4-year, $77 million deal, it's just unfortunate to have him going down. It doesn't seem super serious, but hopefully that's something that doesn't bother him as we move forward. And in light of that, here is the Packers starting offensive line. Today, here we have it from Matt Schneidman, who says, first OL today with no Elton Jenkins or Aaron Banks. We have Rasheed Walker at left tackle, Jordan Morgan at left guard, Sean Ryan at center, Jacob Monk at right guard, and then Zach Tom at right tackle. And I think for Jordan Morgan, with him being a first rounder last year, there's so many... he's a lot of different opportunities depending on where the Packers think he could play best. And I think he's competing for a potential left tackle job. He's gotten some snaps there. And now with the Banks injury and Elton Jenkins down, with those two guys down, he also is going to be seemingly competing at that left guard job. So hopefully Banks will be back really soon. If not, if Jenkins were to be back before... if Jenkins were to be back before Aaron Banks, then at that point, maybe Jenkins goes to guard. We'll have to see what the Packers do there. But they have so many different versatile offensive linemen, and so it's going to be something to watch as we move forward. And then from Rob Domofsky, who shared this, Packers rookie wide receiver Savion Williams is out today because of a concussion. He had made a few nice catches the first 2 days. So once again, you have a rookie here, and he's dealing with an injury. And I think it's really unfortunate for rookies dealing with injuries just because it's such valuable time when you look at just their development. And we saw last year with rookie running back Marshawn Lloyd, dealt with a ton of injuries, missed some time during training camp as well as during the regular season, and then unfortunately pretty much missed the entire year. And so I think there are things that he, could have developed more during camp last time, and hopefully with Williams, this isn't something super serious, but the Packers do have a ton of depth at receiver, and so they should be able to handle it, but it's just unfortunate. Christian Watson down. He'll be out for a while with that ACL injury, as well as Williams now down, at least for today's practice. And then here's the rest of the injuries we have from Wes Hodquist, who says on X, Packers camp number 3 not practicing. Aaron Banks back, Savion Williams concussion, Quay Walker ankle, Christian Watson knee, Colin Oliver hamstring, Amar Johnson hamstring, John Williams back, Elton Jenkins back. So already a good amount of injuries for the Packers. Not awesome. And then here we have the starters for today from Andy Herman, who says, starters, Love at quarterback, Josh Jacobs at running back. On the offensive line, we have Walker left tackle, Morgan left guard, Ryan center, Monk right guard, Tom right tackle with those injuries, which I shared earlier. And then we also have Kraft and Musgrave at tight end, and then Wicks and Dobbs at receiver. And I think when it comes to Matthew Golden, which I'll touch on a little more of how the Packers are using him and use him today in different types of ways, but he is still a rookie receiver, so it's not that surprising to see Wicks out there ahead of him with Romeo Dobbs. Wicks has been here with the Packers for a couple seasons now, and he's an incredible route runner. He was one of the best in the NFL when it came to route running last year. His problem, which we all know about, was so many drop issues. Both him and Jaden Reed struggled a ton. Dobbs, not quite as much. But I do think with Wicks, if he can clean up these drop issues, he has a chance to be a very, very good NFL receiver. And one thing to keep an eye on all season for the Packers is just their receiver situation, because if you look at the future here, you have Christian Watson, the final year of his deal. You have Romeo Dobbs, the final year of his deal. And then, of course, you have a few rookies in here and Dontavian Wicks as well. And because the receiver market is so expensive, as is pretty much, most positions now, but when you have these receivers making around $40 million a year, some of the best, even if you're a middle-of-the-road receiver, you're going to be making, $15 to $20 million. And so the question for Brian Gutekunst, Packers GM, when it comes to this next offseason is, does he want to pay Dobbs? Does he want to pay Christian Watson? Because let's say Wicks comes in, plays really well, and fixes his drop issues. That gives you some more options when it comes to what you want to do with contracts with Dobbs as well as Christian Watson. I doubt both of those guys will be back next year, just because it's a ton of money and they drafted so many, or they invested a ton at wide receiver. So that's just something to keep an eye on as we continue to move forward through the rest of the season. And then we have starting defense. Here's defensive line. Gary, Wyatt, Clark, Lucas Van Ness. This is also from Andy Herman. At linebacker, Cooper, McDuffie, and then Isaiah Simmons as well. Quay Walker's still out with an injury, and so Simmons has been in there. And there's been a ton of hype around him just from different Packers reporters who have been sharing just how intriguing he's looked, the speed he has, things like that. So I'm curious to see if he can really come in and make some kind of impact this year with the Packers. That would be awesome. Former top 10 pick. Then starting at corner, this is not nickel. This is with 3 middle linebackers out there. At corner, we have Hobbs and Nixon at cornerback. And another thing that I'm keeping an eye on, when the Packers moved to nickel on the first couple of days, it looked like to start, they were having Bullard out there with Hobbs and Nixon on the outside. Carrington Valentine made a lot of nice plays today, which we'll get into in a second. But I think the Packers are testing out, what's the best lineup when it comes to these corners. Do you want to put, when you're in nickel, do you want to put Carrington outside, move Hobbs inside where he has experience a lot, previously playing on the inside? Or do you want to keep Bullard in there and keep Carrington Valentine on the sideline? That's just a question the Packers have to figure out moving forward. And then Williams and McKinney at safety. Now here from Ryan Wood, who says, Zach Tom with a false start, smacks his hand in disgust. Anthony Belton replaces him for a rep. No superstar treatment. Zach Tom, who just got the massive deal, the largest signing bonus among offensive linemen in NFL history, making a simple mistake there, but, no big deal. It's early in training camp, and I think that's something that happens a lot early in camp. Guys can be a little rusty from time to time. Not saying Tom is necessarily rusty. Some guys false start. It's not a big deal. But I think it's something to watch. Guys are going to get more acclimated as, time goes by. Then from Andy Herman, love dealing early. Finds Dobbs over the middle. Fake end around to Golden. Play action. Dobbs settles in a zone. Slightly high overthrow, but Dobbs brings it in for about 16. And I feel like with Romeo Dobbs, I do think that Jordan Love and Romeo Dobbs have a great connection, and it felt to me like a lot of times last season that when Jordan Love needs someone, he's really willing to look Romeo Dobbs' way, and I do think that Dobbs is underrated as a receiver. I think because there's so many mouths to feed in Green Bay, sometimes Dobbs doesn't get as many targets as some of these other better receivers in the league. He just doesn't get, the Packers don't look his way as much as other teams' top options. People look at them in that way. So I do really like Romeo Dobbs. But now moving on to Andy Herman, who says Malik Willis with a keeper on a read option and a fantastic job by Chris Brooks getting out on the block to make it a big gain. Brooks does everything well. And that's one thing to watch. Behind Josh Jacobs, we have the running back battle for the number 2 job. Third rounder from last year, Marshawn Lloyd, Chris Brooks, as well as Emmanuel Wilson. And Chris Brooks and Emmanuel Wilson played some pretty solid football last year. So we'll see if they can hold off Marshawn Lloyd. But Lloyd is so talented, so quick. I think that he's going to win that job. Now here we have a little on Matthew Golden. From Wes Hodquist, who says, Matthew Golden end around, Malik Willis, read option keeper, Golden catch off motion. And so there we see the Packers, motioning Matthew Golden. And I think if you look at him at his time at Texas last year after being at Houston, Texas loved to use him when it came to, motioning him a ton. And I think if you look at Tyreek Hill with the Dolphins, the way that they use that sort of cheat motion where he's already moving before the ball snaps. So that way, when the ball is snapped, you have someone like Tyreek Hill at full speed. It makes it that much harder for defenders. And Texas used Golden like that a lot of different times. And so I feel like the Packers are going to utilize that. Matt LaFleur loves to run motion. The Packers have always been one of the teams that is super high in the NFL just when it comes to motion rate. And I think that's one of the reasons they got him. So they're utilizing him in that way here. I'm on day 3 of Packers training camp. And then here we have from Andy Herman, who says, Monk now at center, Ryan at right guard, Dobbs with a sliding catch against Nixon, Nice throw by Love. I think that's only the second completion that Nixon has allowed over the first few days. So seemingly Keyshawn has been playing pretty good football the first few days. Another end around to Golden. This one gets a bit more. Solid blocking downfield. Speed is real. So I'm not sure if that's another end around or the same one that Wes Hodquist was noting. But Matthew Golden, 4.29 speed. I think there's some guys that you just want to try to get the ball into guys' hands, and Matthew Golden is one of those players. And this is the first wide receiver in a long time the Packers have drafted round 1. So I fully expect them to utilize him at a super high rate. And even yesterday, I shared in that other update video here on YouTube that there was one play where he broke multiple guys' ankles. So he has that ability to get moving and get going, and he's being utilized in some interesting ways here by the Packers. Then from Ryan Wood, who says, Matthew Golden doing a lot of pre-snap motions today. First jet sweep, got stuffed for 2 yards. He just broke his second down the left sideline, a gain of at least 20, if not a TD. So similar plays there he's referencing, but multiple reporters discussing the pre-snap motions the Packers are using for Matthew Golden. Then from Andy Herman, who says, Willis rifles an out route to Hardman, which Kalen King dives for, but it zips right past his fingertips to Hardman for a nice pickup. Willis's arm is legit. And that's one thing with Savion Williams dealing with a concussion, as well as Christian Watson being out. McCall Hardman was picked up this offseason, and he's a guy who has some experience in a Super Bowl, experience with the Kansas City Chiefs. And so while the Packers do have a ton of receivers, it's good to know that even if, let's say, Savion Williams misses some more time with a concussion, that you have McCall Hardman, who hasn't been super productive, last season, but he has some of that experience and has that speed as well. Then also from Herman, who says, Willis to Hicks on a comeback for about 7. Willis to Hicks deep right, but Valentine fights him off. Hicks slips, and Valentine gets the pick, his second of camp. So Carrington Valentine is really pushing to be one of these starting corners. I think that in the base defense, it's probably going to be Keyshawn Nixon and not Carrington Valentine, but Nate Hobbs. But when it comes to nickel, the Packers, I think the different ways they've done so far is you have Bullard in the slot and then Hobbs outside. You could also do Carrington outside and Hobbs in the slot. So it's good to see Valentine making some plays, multiple plays here at Packers training camp early on. Then a few more updates here from Wes Hodquist, who says, number 1 team minutes goes 3 and out with Van Ness and Clark converging on Love to blow third down dead. And hopefully we can see Van Ness take that step in year 3, because so far he has not lived up to where he was drafted. And I think that's one thing to watch going forward. Can Van Ness take that next step? Because if he can, that is going to bode very well for this Packers defense, who needs their pass rush to be much more consistent. Then from Andy Herman, 3's up next. Same scenario, Clifford at QB, Clifford to Shepard for a few. And Shepard was brought in recently from Colorado, was with Shedeur Sanders last year, and it's going to be tough for him to make the roster because of all his talent, but he, makes a nice play there. Shepard with a sick double move on Micah Robinson, who bit hard, and Shep was going to be wide open deep. Robinson wisely holds him to make sure it wouldn't be completed. PI, first down. So making some nice plays there. Then from Mike Spofford, who says, Nixon with a nice breakup on a deep lob for Dobbs, which appears to be underthrown a bit by Love. But next play, Love buys time, steps up, and lets it rip downfield for Wicks. Hits him in stride for long TD. So you have one underthrow by Love and then a perfect ball to Dontavian Wicks. And as I said earlier, if Wicks can develop and fix his drop issues, he's an incredibly talented wide receiver. And so we'll see if that continues moving forward. And I think with Jordan Love, one of the biggest things for him in 2025 is just consistency. And I think we see it for a lot of stretches in his first 2 seasons starting, where he'll have near the end of the season, he has had those stretches where he throws an insane amount of touchdowns and nearly no interceptions. And then unfortunately, both of the past 2 years, he ends with the 3 interception game against the Eagles, the 2 interception game in the playoffs the year prior against the 49ers. And so hopefully he can just be more consistent come playoff time. And I think that's just something to look for going forward. But he had a nice play there to Dontavian Wicks. And then we're almost done here with these updates. But from Ryan Wood, 3 more for Brandon McManus, 40, 42, 44. He's 13 for 13 in camp, a perfect 7 for 7 today. And that's one thing that's great about this year in camp for the Packers is you have a kicker that you can rely on, who was very consistent last season. He did miss in the Eagles game, but besides that, during the regular season, he was incredibly consistent. The past couple seasons, because McManus came in a little later in the year, I can't remember the exact week, but with Anders Carlson, he didn't work out. Then you bring in Narveson, he didn't work out. And so it's just nice to be in Packers camp and have a kicker who's just super consistent, because that was not the case the past 2 training camps. And then from Ryan Wood, Tucker Kraft catches an 8-yard leak from Jordan Love, but Javon Bullard punches it out from behind. Xavier McKinney scoops it and goes the other way. Second fumble for Packers offense today. Josh Jacobs, first lost. And that's one thing we saw last year from the Packers defense. They were very consistent when it came to forcing turnovers, a ton of interceptions, and I think that's a focal point of Jeff Hafley's defense. And obviously, the more turnovers, the better it is for your team, the better it is. You get Jordan Love more opportunities on offense. And then finally from here, Rob Domofsky says, that's it for practice number 3. High energy session with lots of 2-minute. Kicker Brandon McManus put on a show with makes from 51, 51, and 56. Jordan Morgan got some left tackle work with the ones. 1 hour and 59 minutes. Practice leading into a day off tomorrow. So Jordan Morgan getting some work there at left tackle. We'll see if he can potentially push for that spot with Rasheed Walker, who played there mainly last season. But that's pretty much all the updates for today. If you want more Packers content, feel free to subscribe to the channel, the YouTube channel down below. I'll be out with more videos if any more news does come out. But thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.